You see, I'm a simple college student, living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver here in the States, and I purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet, aside from school purposes. That means no 4chan, no VBoard, no Bulbapedia, etc. As I was busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on launch day. After my school year had ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I remembered that long ago, my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it's the only Pokemon game left that they have for the Game Boy Color. $10. Fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the cartridge was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on, and the same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous saved file, which was odd as I was expecting all of these cartridges to have been wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had 999 hours put into the game with all 16 badges, 99,999 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon on the Pokédex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. I checked his Pokemon to see what a badass team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played the game, but I decided to check the profiles of these Pokemon anyways. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this was before there were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left with 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time, I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that, despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appeared to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason, there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if just leaning on its side. There was no music either, and there was no exit or ladder. Or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but couldn't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black, and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill, as I recognized that melody I heard to be the same theme you heard when you listened to the radio at the Alph Ruins where the Unknown are. I immediately realized that this wasn't a loading transition, but rather, I was in a dark room and would need flash. Before I took care of that though, I immediately checked my Pokegear to change the radio to something more pleasant. But it turned out that there was no radio card, or even a phone or time cards. There was only a map card in which Gold, ... from earlier, and I will call him Gold from now on, was just walking in a midst of black. I recalled that Cyndaquil had Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying, "Hurry, used Flash," or anything like that. The room just became lit, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path heading south. The ladder I used to go down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made until I finally made it to the end, which there appeared to be a sign. The sign, when read, said, "Turn back now." Suddenly, I was asked to answer yes or no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I didn't know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a ladder-climbed sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and in a few seconds was replaced with the not as creepy Pokeflute radio music. Suddenly, it said that Hurry had fainted, which was odd, since I recalled that there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly, and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon were there, but instead were all replaced with level 10 Unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the Unknown. My then team of Unknown read, "He died." Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appeared to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were gray bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside that room appeared to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I've walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of ... again, only to find out that the sprite of Gold was missing his arms. He also seemed less smug, but rather more sad and empty in a way that I do not know how to describe. For some reason, it also said now that he had 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun downwards slowly, as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold was colored differently now. Instead of the usual red color he donned, he appeared completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games placed into a colored background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now he was as white as his overworld sprite. He lost his legs and had what appeared to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also said now that he had 32 badges, which started to disturb me as this change in number seemed to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contained 5 Unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The Unknown are this time level 15 and spelled out dying. I checked the Celebi's profile and it was a shiny Celebi, except there was only half the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, and 1 eye, and only 1 attack, Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything was apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic man and woman NPC. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happened when I tried to interact with them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appeared chopped off, with a transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged and finally in a battle. The music started again, which sounded like the unknown radio music, but played backwards. Gold's battle back sprite matched his front one with the bloody eyes, white skin, and lack of arms, while Red's sprite was the same as before in gold, silver, and crystal, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he had no name, and both of us had only one Pokemon each, which is weird as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with half a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny noise and animation was different, as the sounds it made sounded like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except it was level 255, and his sprite seemed sad and had tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon run menu, I was only given the option to use attacks. Since Celebi only had one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there were no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happened as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me, as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu had about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look, not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted, except in the text it read, "Celebi has died," and instead of the ordinary drop off the screen animation, the Celebi back sprite just vanished. For some reason, the Pikachu was still up, even with Perish Song, and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards, it said that Pikachu had died, with a slow fade-out animation. Apparently, I was the winner, as the transparent red sprite showed up and said, ... At this point, I just freaked out, as that transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. I was back in the overworld with another change to Gold's sprite. He was now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile where, this time, the only thing that remained of him was his head, with a transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he had 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which when spelled out read, "No more." I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe finally I get to play this game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic fuck must have done something. I walked around my room to interact with things as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what was awaiting down there. Note, I said walked, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so, just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV didn't work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower level room of my house. Everything appeared normal, except Mom wasn't home. After failing to interact with anything in the room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, the door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just walked straight through it into a void. I continued moving south to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanished as I continued south into the void. It was creepy as when I entered the void, the outline on Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said, "Goodbye forever, dot dot dot," notably with a space in between the forever and ellipses, and vanished. As that happened, it said question mark question mark question mark used nightmare, which at that point I couldn't deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back in that same small hollowed out room surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least I say I was back there, as there's no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved, not even wall bumping noise. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no gold sprite left. It said that I had 0 badges, and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase that I dared to read. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was then covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text appeared, which said, "Rest in peace." The room was a big grave, surrounded by other graves. Gold had already been dead. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon Master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened, at which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folktales and legends, but the second generation have shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that rigged game has told me.